Welcome to the Monday edition, the conference championship edition of Unexpected Points. I am joined once again by Ben Brown. We'll go through all the numbers, all the narratives, what you're hearing, what you need to know going forward into the Super Bowl. So, everybody, let's go ahead and get to it. All right, that goes on for a little bit longer than I thought. Now that we're playing this, live here. So I hope you enjoyed those lovely tunes. Again, Ben Brown is with me. We had a historic comeback or collapse, depending upon how you want to define it, and I think that's probably one of the more interesting discussions here when dealing with the first game. So let's get the first things first, which is paying the bills. So before we get into Chiefs and Bengals, before we get into Rams and 49ers, let's talk about getting 25% off PFF. Promo code UNEXPECTED. All of PFF's locked article content, betting dashboards for what's remaining in a very short remainder here for the Super Bowl. But there's going to be tons, obviously, of prop action. Lots of action on the Super Bowl here. And then coming into the new draft guides coming out, free agency, all that content will be there. 25% off, promo code UNEXPECTED. And one more I'll hit here. Well, actually, you know what? Let's get into the first game for here, and then I'll hit a few ads afterwards. So, Ben, this Chiefs Bengals game, I, like many others, I was sending out some snarky adjacent tweets in the first half about whether it was time to start discussing Bengals offseason free agency and draft needs, being that it was all over for them. On a scale of 1 to 10, how shocked were you by the Chiefs' eventual loss in this game?
I was fairly shocked. I would say that my betting bankroll also had a decent shock to it there toward the end. I was on some early Bengals 7.5, thankfully, but in-game stuff I was leaning heavily on Kansas City's direction. So yeah, the second half eventual collapse, whatever you want to call it, right now was was not the outcome that I definitely expected pregame. That's for sure.
Yeah. So let's go through some of these numbers. Again, I'm going to do up top what I normally do. Discuss the betting line, discuss the actual score, and then discuss my quote-unquote adjusted score, where I lean a little bit more heavily on success rate versus outlier efficiency plays in either direction. I make some adjustments for turnover-worthy plays versus actual turnovers. I make some adjustments that's going to downweight third down and fourth down conversion success rates a little bit because those are such huge swing plays there. And when you do that for this game, which Kansas City was favored by 7, as we mentioned, or 7.5 in some places maybe. Final score 27-24, Cincinnati. My adjusted score, and I was surprised that it was this wide, was 30-20, Kansas City.
Wow.
And yeah, the reason this is the case, because Kansas City's efficiency wasn't that great overall. If you're going to look at how they functioned on a EPA per play basis in this game, they actually had negative total EPA per play efficiency, whereas the Bengals were slightly positive. But the reason is the reliance on success rate. 55% success rate for the Chiefs, 39% for the Bengals, and the Chiefs were like super successful running the ball. They were in the 95th percentile basically for their run success rate and efficiency. And it was actually Patrick Mahomes that let them down here. And the defense played pretty well also. So I don't think it was that wide of a margin, but you know, the Bengals had some big third down conversions, which put them over the top. And the Chiefs, unlike normal, were kind of messing up left and right when it came down to some of these high leverage third down plays.
Yeah, definitely. And definitely in the second half, right? I do think we see basically one of the biggest EPA per play swings from a first half to second half in this matchup. I think they went from like 0.4 EPA in the first half to like negative 0.5. So almost a full EPA point swing differential. It's honestly like still mind blowing to me a little bit what happened, right? Like it was not the same offense in the first half as it was in the second half. Now, of course, you know, on that one touchdown play with, you know, Patrick Mahomes basically scrambling all over the place, does get the touchdown on that one, but then he kind of resorted to that mentality in the second half, especially. This was his highest, you know, time to throw game of the 2021 season. And it was just, you know, it was kind of ugly. It seemed like he was almost jittery, trying to do maybe too much, trying to extend plays too long. And the Bengals seemed really content on, just rushing, 3 or 4 pass rushers and, kind of playing this coverage where no one was really breaking deep. And I think, Patrick Mahomes definitely struggled trying to overcome that. And it was, definitely a pretty significant downfall, I would say, which was
Yeah,
surprising.
yeah.
So,
I mean, what's interesting about the defense is that you would assume with such a stark contrast between first half and second half that there would have been some sort of major defensive adjustment. But
right.
the truth is, they asked Andy Reid about it after the game, and like you mentioned, they didn't bring a lot of pressure, and that was kind of what they were doing in the first half too. It's just they were getting picked apart, so there wasn't a huge change here. So overall in this game, like I said, story of two halves, but then even overall in this game, and again, I'm going to focus probably a little bit more on the failure of the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes here than what you know praising what's going on
Right.
with Joe Burrow and the Bengals, only because to me it was the more outlier type of weird outcome here. So from if you look at every playoff game that Patrick Mahomes has had, and we're on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different playoff games here. So this is his 11th playoff game. It was the worst graded game that he's had, even after having that first half, the way that it was. It was the second worst efficiency game he has had, well into the negative in EPA per play. And the worst game he had was when he was completely under siege in the Super Bowl last year.
Right.
Nothing else is really even close to this as far as how bad it was. And when we're talking about the story of two halves, this is what is just absolutely wild to me, is that I looked at every second half in a playoff game since 2012. So over the last 10 years, I got the grade for in the second half for quarterbacks who had at least 10 plays. So nothing where they were just doing nothing the entire second half, but at least 10 plays. I got the grades, I got the EPA per play in the second half. This second half by Patrick Mahomes was the fourth lowest second half playoff grade over the last 10 years. This is amongst 220 different games we're talking about here. Fourth lowest grade, sixth lowest EPA per play. Patrick Mahomes, that just shows you how wild this was. They had at halftime, right before the flub, when they were down there at the end and they didn't get any points, right before that, they were 98% win probability. And I don't think that was super overly optimistic like some people think about these things. I think they actually were probably in that 97 98 range at that point.
Right, definitely. I mean, obviously, if they get even a field goal there, it does help in some situations, moving from 11 to 14. But yeah, getting a touchdown there completely changes the complexion of the second half. But maybe that obviously, we can't really go back and nitpick. I know people want to say, well, you should have just kicked the field goal. I don't think the play calling, obviously we don't really want to question a ton, but maybe it wasn't the best option not throwing a pass at least into the end zone so that you can actually allow it. I know obviously Tyreek Hill, pretty dynamic playmaker, can make guys miss, but you really don't want to put him in that situation at the end of the half with no timeouts left. But in saying that, yeah, like you would still even only up 11, it still felt like the Chiefs were in complete control of that game. And I agree with you. Like they didn't shift a whole lot, right? Like I think the week 17 matchup, they did kind of shift the coverage quite a bit from the first half to the second half. Maybe that was one reason why, but that just seemed almost more of, a random penalty type performance. There were a few drops in that particular matchup for the reasons why, the Kansas City Chiefs offense just completely failed them. And this one, it's in my opinion solely on Patrick Mahomes, and I do think that they only pressure or only pass rush with 3 guys 7 times in the first half, 11 times in the second half. So I don't think that's too dramatic of a split, but he was absolutely awful in those situations. And you would think, Patrick Mahomes is the type of guy that can potentially destroy some of these zone defenses, finding some of these guys in seams. But like it just seemed like maybe his pass catchers weren't ready for it, or he was just completely missing some reads. I haven't watched the all 22 tape on it, but I'm flabbergasted more so in the way that they also lost. Even more so in the fact that they did lose, right? So it just was, kind of a weird takeaway for sure. So.
Yeah. I mean, so Mahomes is under pressure, 23% pressure rate.
Which is low.
Which is low, yeah. which is low, definitely. Now, what I think was a very important stat on the other side of the ball is that the pressure rate for Burrow in this one was 38.6%. So that's actually higher than his normal pressure rate. He was under pressure. 16 pressures in this game he faced, only 1 sack. So 1 sack for 16 pressures. We saw him escape a few times, make some big third down plays. His his conversion, he gained about 6.5 EPA on third downs, converting a couple more than you would have expected. I think it was 3 more than you would have expected.
Right.
So there's that. So 1 sack on 16 pressures. During the regular season, he averaged 1 sack for every 4 pressures. So they were getting to him. They just were not getting him to the ground. Now, some of it were some escapes where you don't necessarily going to think are going to happen that often. Some of it are, the Chiefs. We saw this against Josh Allen too. They don't exactly have athletes who are getting. I mean, Chris Jones can get pressure, but if you have a quarterback who can move out, he can move out. Frank Clark, he just can't do anything basically.
Right,
So,
right.
And then you've had Melvin Ingram who is been getting some pressure, and for the fact that you brought him in mid-season for basically nothing, and he ends up providing one of the more dynamic players on your front is not a great thing for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Right, definitely. And I mean, yeah, without Melvin Ingram in that game yesterday, it would have been a complete disaster, right? So he was the only one really having any sort of success. But I mean, yeah, even without the pressure like the high pressure rate for Patrick Mahomes, he still took 4 sacks, right? All in the second half, all with a pass rushing of 3 or less people. So maybe hats off to the coverage unit from the Cincinnati Bengals, but it's really hard for me to see them making that significant of a jump that quickly. So outside of Jesse Bates, I don't know if they were necessarily playing, really well or exceptionally well, basically in the whole season. So yeah, I'm maybe as perplexed as you are on this particular one for sure.
Yeah. But what was annoying about this game is that the Bengals were not running the ball well.
Right.
They had a 23-yard run by Joe Mixon in their second or third drive. But other than that, it was just a bunch of first down runs that were doing nothing. If you look at their pass rate versus expectation, they were 1.3% over expectation. And again, when their season turned earlier, they were 17% over expectation in week 16. The first time they played the Chiefs, they were 13% over expectation in week 17 in that Chiefs game. Then, since then, they've kind of pulled off of it a bit.
Yeah, right.
-5% we don't really care what happened in week 18 without Joe Burrow. But then in the playoffs, 4.7%, 8.8%, 1.3%. I thought that Zach Taylor was calling this game tight, and maybe he is, the prognosticator of prognosticators here, and he knew that Patrick Mahomes was going to fall apart in the second half. But really, the way that he called this game almost gave them no chance of coming back if Patrick Mahomes doesn't completely
shit the bed,
burst into flames in a bad way in the middle of the football field.
Yeah, I definitely don't, and that's maybe part of the reason why it's like it does look like more of a Chiefs collapse than any sort of thing that the Bengals went out and actually won, right? And I do think Burrow for all intents and purposes did do that, but Zach Taylor really didn't put specifically the offense in a really good spot to actually go and win a game in Kansas City, where Patrick Mahomes was playing close to his ceiling performance, which the entire second half wasn't anywhere close to that. So I definitely agree with that particular takeaway. And saying that, we did see, obviously the 49ers rushing attack was shut down against the Rams. So that's obviously going to be a pretty significant matchup if Zach Taylor continues to maybe rest too much on Joe Mixon's shoulders once again here in that Super Bowl matchup. But we can talk more about that later, of course. But from that perspective, maybe that's the reason why you would say, the Chiefs definitely probably let this one slip away more than anything else.
Yeah. And some of the numbers here, we're going to hear, I think the narrative is already going to start off in the Super Bowl about, well, the Rams are kind of more talented, at least defensively for sure, but the Bengals have Joe Burrow. I mean, Burrow in this game, 250 yards passing. Again, let's get into some of the efficiency statistics here.
Right.
6.6 yards per attempt, less than Patrick Mahomes. He was good because of the sacks that brought him up, but there was, let me see, about over 60% of his yards came via run after the catch. And if you look at some of the big plays that he had here, I mean, Mixon had 27 yards receiving, all of it after the catch on 3 catches. 3 catches for Samaje Perine, 55 yards after the catch, including that huge touchdown catch. And then some others on here, T. Higgins and others were able to generate yards after the catch. So it was a good game for Burrow that he didn't flop in this one. But again, not the high end type of outcome that you would think that you would need to beat this team. Let's talk about a couple different things here that I've gotten onto my radar when it comes to end of game situation because we're the nerds. We want to talk about these sorts of things. I've seen a lot of criticism out there. I'm not sure if it's even factually accurate sometimes, but a lot of criticism of the fact that Tony Romo suggested, I don't think he actually said they should do this, but he suggested that when the Chiefs had the ball near the goal line at the end of the game, down by 3, that the Bengals should have thought about letting them score. And what I've heard for criticism about Romo in this, I think people have some of the parameters incorrect, but the actual parameters were first down and goal from the 5-yard line, a minute 30 left.
Okay.
That was the situation here. I've heard 45 seconds left from the 9-yard line. That didn't happen. I don't know where people are coming up with this scenario where they're criticizing Romo and saying that was the circumstance. It was first and goal from the 5-yard line with 1 minute and 30 seconds left to go. I actually thought that maybe that was the way to go there. Now, I'm not sure what the Chiefs were doing on the other side, but did you have any contemplation of potentially doing that since there was so much time left at that point?
Yeah, I honestly do think that would probably have been, obviously looking back on it, and you can judge your, results based on, the actual results or the process, but I do think it would have been sound process to allow that to happen first and goal at the 5-yard line specifically. And that was when I remember him actually mentioning, the idea of it and kind of like thinking about, is that a spot where I would actually do it? And I did come to the conclusion that does make a lot of sense. And, it was basically the flip side to what happened in that week 17 matchup where, the Kansas City Chiefs didn't basically let them kind of go in and score and give their quarterback another opportunity. Granted, it didn't work out whatsoever for Kansas City, but that was more just a part of an overall reflection of what happened to them in the second half, more so than, the Bengals actually making this grand, defensive stand there along the goal line. So I don't hate Tony Romo whatsoever for, contemplating that, because I do think that should definitely be an option in your decision-making process. And I do think that would probably be the best way to actually win the game outright from my perspective. So
Yeah. I mean, I think he also might have mentioned it, or maybe the first time he mentioned it was
it was like
after
20.
the first down play.
Yeah, I remember there was something with they were around like the 22-yard line or something, and it was 1st and 10. Then and it was like, well, how close do they get before you just let them score or something?
Yeah,
I thought
yeah. There was he was probably, I think it was a little bit of a galaxy brain thing of like sliding down sort of near the end zone and that sort of stuff. Yeah, that wasn't necessarily going to happen that much earlier, but I do think that was it might have been the right move to let them score on first down. Now, once they play defense, they stopped them for a 1-yard gain on first down. So then it was second and goal from the 4. They call a timeout. Like, obviously,
right.
You're not going to like then let them score because
Right,
then
right.
why did you just do it on the last play? But on the next 2 plays, I think a little bit for Patrick Mahomes on the next couple of plays, I think it got in his head a little bit, this idea of not wanting to leave too much time to a detriment, because first of all, they should just run the ball, I think, on second and goal from the 4 again,
Right.
rather than drop back to pass. I thought Mahomes did the right move, which was try to get closer to the line of scrimmage and actually take the sack and take the 4-yard loss. If you're going to throw the ball from the 9-yard line versus throwing the ball from the 5-yard line,
stopping everything.
it's not a huge difference. So I think he did the right thing there. But then on the next play, the crazy play where he went back and he talked about his time to throw in the second half, it might have thrown off his numbers because he was running around for about 20 seconds back there on that one. That one almost seemed like he didn't want to throw the ball too quickly into the end zone, and which makes absolutely no sense because, in that circumstance, he wanted to like thread some sort of needle where he could run around for 15 seconds and then score the touchdown at the end, which is that makes no sense to me at all.
Right, definitely. And I actually agree with you on the 2nd and 4 was kind of the spot where they seemed to lose the game, because they did not need to run a play where, Patrick Mahomes basically has to roll out one side of the pocket to alleviate pressure, with a 3-man rush, right? Like that's the spot where you should be, throwing the football at least, on some sort of quick screen or some sort of jet motion. I think that's where you'd almost maybe want to use the play that you used previously with, Tyreek Hill at the end of the first half. But you don't want, Patrick Mahomes dropping back and then making it some sort of, 3rd and long type situation where everything's already compressed near the goal line. And I think that's just, kind of compounded to the next play where he lost 15 more yards and made the kick somewhat interesting. But once he took the sack, 5-yard loss to get it to 3rd and 9, it did seem like there were just not too many opportunities for them to actually win that game in that spot. Of course, they could have converted there, but they didn't even come really close to doing that. So I do agree with you. I think nitpicking 2nd and 4 is not the spot to be in that particular play calling situation. So
Yeah. But again, They had plenty of chances to have done much, much better
They
than
got the
that.
ball in overtime, right? I mean,
Yeah, and they got the ball in overtime first, but this time, I guess you could call it a 3 and out. I mean, a 3 and
right.
interception on the third play there, which wasn't the most damaging interception since it was like a kind of arm punt type of territory,
Right.
but obviously they could not stop at all. Surprisingly, they could not stop at all the rushing attack from the Bengals to wrap up the game. So now looking back here, we're not going to do a full post-mortem on the Chiefs, but Patrick Mahomes, let's look at the contract here because I think this is going to be the interesting thing. Patrick Mahomes is probably going to have the most restructured contract in NFL history by the time
Right.
that his career is over because his deal,
I
and
mean,
this is what makes
this is
things
the year, right?
difficult.
This is the year, right? That it just
Yeah, I
gets
mean,
crazy.
there's one even like more ludicrous step up
Right.
later on in the year, but if you look at like his cap numbers by season, so he signed this in 2020, it was 5.3 million. It was 7.4 million. So he only has a 7.4 million cap hit this season.
Right.
So now it jumps up to 36 million next season. And then the season after that, it jumps up to 46
6
million.
million.
And then eventually, way down the road, there's numbers like 60
59.
million.
Yeah,
When we get into
59 million.
yes, there's some huge numbers there. So I mean, I think what this team will do, if there's any indication of how they've kind of played out in these contracts here, I think they're already going to restructure this deal over the offseason, not take a step up of, let me see, what is that?
28
18
million.
million,
Yeah.
18 million. Oh, you're right. $28 million. Not going to take a step up of $28 million right here because they're still in this win now mode. Of course, you push everything into the past, but if you're going to push things into the future, but pushing things into the future is probably not bad for them.
Yeah.
Do you have any lack of confidence in their ability to compete next year after seeing something like this?
I mean and I think you bring up a really good point, right? I mean, he's going from 4% of the cap hit up to 17.1%, so increase of 13% of the Chiefs cap hit is going to be directed toward Patrick Mahomes in this particular. That is pretty significant, given the situation with the veterans, especially on the defense side of the football. So that's yeah. I mean, unless you talk to Mahomes and is like, the reason obviously why we got to where we are is because of you, but we also lost in the conference championship, and a lot of reasons because he didn't perform up to expectation. Can we win with a maybe even worse team around you against some of these teams coming up in the AFC specifically? And I think that is going to be a pretty serious question. So I do still want to say Patrick Mahomes is you're capable of winning at any time with him, but in saying that, like, he definitely didn't show that this year. So I do think there's a lot more chinks in the armor, kind of after losing to Tom Brady and this being maybe he's not like the runaway, the best quarterback in the NFL, and he's just head and shoulders above everybody else. Because I don't think anybody is saying that right now, and I don't think that's what's played out on the field. So paying him this much is going to be tough to, I think, stay really competitive along with the top teams in the AFC. I would say.
Yeah. I mean,
Because
you got
missed
Herbert
on,
coming on.
I mean, they've missed on other draft picks and those things, right? And everyone, the Bills haven't missed as bad, and the Bengals have basically been spot on with all their draft picks. So that's kind of where they're losing right now with the reinforcements around Patrick Mahomes, I would say. So
Yeah. You have Herbert. He's going to be around for a while. You're going to have, Mahomes is there now. You have Burrow, who's playing well, and so on and so forth. It's going to be Lamar Jackson still in the conference. So there are lots of potential places to have difficulty there going forward. But again, just restructure that baby, bring that cap hit down under
what would be a
10 million
reasonable
somehow.
Yeah, what would be a reasonable spot for you? Do you think you would obviously want to target from a team perspective if you were gonna already kind of adjust some things, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The offensive line is totally rebuilt. I mean, they need
right,
probably another receiver. Might be a good place to think about it. McCole Hardman, he did his Hardman things, which is one pass. There's a deep pass where he looked like he could have got under it, and then for some reason it just fell right in front of him. Supposedly he was demanding the ball on the sideline, which I thought was interesting because there was also a play in the second half which went right through his hands and like looked like it could have been an interception. So probably bolstering that up a little bit there. I mean, the problem is you got Kelsey. Kelsey is like older than Rob Gronkowski, right? So he's getting up there. That's going to be a concern. And then on the defense with Tyrann Mathieu and others are getting up there too. There's probably going to be like a mini rebuild that's going to happen. for the Chiefs, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be this offseason. I think they may just push everything back in this offseason with a pretty similar roster, and then a year or two down the road for a bit of a rebuild is what I would
Right,
guess.
right, definitely. I mean, and I think, yeah, the lingering question is Travis Kelce and how, how far can you ride with him, right? Because I do think you see a little bit of, maybe not necessarily complete regression, but a spot where he wasn't necessarily at the level that he was even in 2020, and like how quickly does that cliff fall off, and then you really are just relying on the Tyreek Hill heavy show, which is worked out in times, but when you get to some of these deeper playoff runs, hasn't necessarily been the path to complete success with no receptions in the second half of this particular game. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
It's
that was his disappearance was confounding for sure. All right, before we get to the NFC Championship game, let's talk Western and Southern. Want a chance to win the ultimate game day feast, whether it's football, success, or financial savvy? Winning starts with asking us questions. Would you like to know what it's like behind the scenes with Al on Sunday Night Football? How about a need to know for your financial future? Western and Southern is teaming up with PFF's very own Chris Collinsworth to share insights that can put you ahead on both your fantasy and financial scoreboards. Today is the last day to submit your question. Every submission earns you a chance to win the ultimate feast to celebrate football's favorite Sunday. We'll cover your catering up to $2,500, coordinate your order from a restaurant near you, and deliver it on February 13th, 2020. Submit your questions at westernsouthern.com/feast. One more time, that's westernsouthern.com/feast. If you're watching on YouTube, check the link in the description below. Remember, with Western and Southern, you can rest assured on game day. And if you wanna, you wanna put a little money down on the games, DraftKings is available for you. This is the moment we've been waiting for. Super Bowl 56 is coming, and that comes with 56-1 odds on either team. Bet just $5 and get 280 in free bets if your team wins. DraftKings Sportsbook is now live in New York, meaning you can bet from almost a third of the country. If the Sportsbook isn't available, though, Daily Fantasy is still available, and you can get a free shot to win $1 million prize with your first deposit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use promo code PFF. Get 56-1 odds on either team. Bet just $5 to get 280 in free bets if your team wins. That's promo code PFF at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 56. 21 or over, see DraftKings.com/sportsbook for full list of requirements and state-specific responsible gambling resources. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Tennessee, call or text the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. In Connecticut, call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Okay, we got a lot of numbers there.
I
Oh,
think
and
I
we
just
got
realized. I think
Manscaped.
I just realized I have a gambling problem. I better call one of these numbers here.
Yeah,
Really
you
quick,
probably
so.
you might as well call all of them just to make
Right.
sure. But before you do, promo code PFF. Okay, Manscaped. What do we got here? Oh, I think this is the same one.
This is the ad we need to hear right here. So.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, this is well, not unfortunately, but I mean, this is a great ad, so we're going to go through it anyway. This is one of the greatest poets of our generation wrote this. Whoever is at Manscaped. Roses are red, violets are blue. Don't let a wild pube wreck you. Valentine's Day is just around the corner. Well, I guess it is a couple weeks away. And our sponsors at Manscaped are here for you with the best tools to get your balls ready for the special occasion. This V-Day, it's time to join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming. With our exclusive offer, go to manscaped.com and use code PFF for 20% off and free shipping. Okay. Plus, remember, we're part of the movement here for making February 13th a national holiday as National Shave Your Balls Day.
Have to. I'm getting on board. I'm waking up early. I might have a cup of coffee or something. And before I start reading and diving into those Super Bowl matchups, I'm gonna
you know what's good about Shave Your Balls Day? Like if you shave early enough, you might be able to get an extra shave in, before going to sleep. So you
do National Shave Your Balls twice.
I mean, National Shave Your Balls. It's only once a year, so you want to get a couple of shaves in. I would say at least
maybe you go post Super Bowl then. That makes a lot of sense. After the commercials and everything, you get 10:30 sort of situation or something.
A lot of possibilities here. And just remember, these products were created for the night, just like this. Will make your V-Day date say, "Wow, what a great set of balls you have there." We still haven't got I still don't know whether or not that is a compliment in a way by it's almost is it a insult by omission by the fact that, only the balls are being complimented. We'll see. Maybe that's like that comes after, there's more of a girth compliment there. Okay, get 20% off and free shipping with code PFF at manscaped.com. That's 20% off, free shipping, manscaped.com. Use code PFF. Join Cupid and shoot your arrow with Manscaped this Valentine's Day. All right, people, we got through it. Let's get to 49ers and death to the man, to the legend, to
your favorite,
my favorite truthing. I'm not a truther of many things, but Jimmy G, I was a Jimmy G truther. He goes down. The townspeople rejoice in his failure, as I've seen the Twitter townspeople rejoice in his failure.
He's too good
so
looking.
In this game, he is. That's part of it. Now he's become like a symbol in the culture war, though, with Jeff Garcia versus Mina Kimes. So, but anyway, so San Francisco at least a name at LA, although they probably had more fans there. 3.5-point favorite were the LA Rams. They win 20-17. And according to my adjusted scores, they were a more dominant team than the final score, more like 21-10, 11-ish for San Francisco. Reason being 32% offensive success rate for San Francisco. They running the ball. They had a 10% success rate rushing the ball in this game, which is a first percentile. This is bad, people. To be low is bad. So first out of 100 percentile. And then their run EPA per play was negative 0.3. Now the Rams, not to be outdone, had a 20% success rate and then a negative run EPA of actually 0.5 because they didn't convert some sneaks and some other stuff there. So two horrible running games, but McVay, turned it over to Stafford a little bit more passing. And this is what I've been starting to think more. I want to get your theory on this. Is like Jimmy G or the subpar quarterback, let's say the Goff, if Goff was still there. So, Stafford dropped back 45 times in this game. I think Jimmy G had something like 20-something dropbacks. So can there be value in a quarterback in the psychological edge where a play caller has more confidence, even if it's not justified necessarily, or the lack of confidence is not justified, has more confidence to allow them to throw the ball? Because I think that is a problem with the Shanahan-Garoppolo pairing, is that they're not leaning on it enough. Garoppolo was averaging 0.2 EPA per play. He's actually had more EPA per play than Stafford and Burrow, believe it or not. Very, very slightly more. But they still leaned on the run, and were not successful at all doing so.
Right. I mean, there's definitely some psychological elements factored into that, right? But I think that it needs to tell you that basically the Shanahan and Garoppolo marriage is just not going to work, right? Because if it's going to fail you in the biggest of spots, if you're not going to be willing to at least adjust a little bit with something that's completely not working, right? Obviously, their run game, lowest PFF rushing grade of the season happened in this particular matchup here. Lowest pass blocking grade, lowest run blocking grade. Like, they were getting absolutely dominated in the trenches. What they needed to do, and the only times that they were successful, was getting Deebo Samuel in space. And whether that's getting him on bubble screens, we saw one of those obviously be successful, but getting him in space with the ball in his hands as quickly as possible was the only way that they were going to be probably successful offensively. If Jimmy Garoppolo couldn't make that seam route throw to basically, an in-cutting wide receiver or George Kittle over the middle, those were the only real plays that were going to be, at all successful. So they needed to press those particular spots, because that is the one vulnerability that the Los Angeles Rams defense had. And, Shanahan had no faith in Garoppolo to consistently throw over the middle. He did end up getting the bad interception at the end on a broken play, but I think he should have been more willing to risk that particular outcome over the middle and give his actual team a chance at winning it, and he just wasn't willing to do so. And I think, played out in his fourth down decision making, it played out in the play calling and everything else, and it was, another spot where definitely the 49ers, I think, let this one slip away.
Yeah, well, we'll get into the game management stuff in a little bit here, which was putrid on both sides.
Both sides
of the ball. But yeah, the pressure was bad. Again, like, one of the things that doesn't come through, and whatever, I can't help it. I'm just gonna do my Jimmy trutherism again. 0 sacks in this game, right? He was kind of under siege, right? And especially near the last couple of plays in this game, he gets rid of the ball quickly. And I know that, like, those getting rid of the ball quickly, hitting those kind of little slants over the middle doesn't look impressive. Clearly, our grading does not feel it's impressive, because he had a 48 grade in this game. despite having a like a 0.23 EPA per play. So he's way off in that direction. So I know it doesn't look impressive, but at least it gets the job done a little bit there. And just to go over to Stafford and what happened there again. So he was 0.2 EPA per play, 85 grade, much higher. There was the dropped interception, but again, there was a dropped interception by Jalen Ramsey on the other side that happened earlier. Not a flawless game by Stafford, not a hugely impressive offensive performance for the entire team. In fact, I looked at some numbers for the last 10 years of Super Bowls, the numbers for teams going into the Super Bowl teams, how they performed in the playoffs. And this Rams team and the Bengals team are two of the bottom 4 teams going into there because but mostly for the Rams, it's just their inability to run the ball has really been the problem in this one.
Right.
Okay, let's talk game management because you brought it up. So the biggest point I think is the fact that the 49ers punted the ball 3 times inside the Rams 45. Now some of them were a little bit longer, but the 4th and 2 out on the 45-yard line, 10 minutes remaining, 3 timeouts to your opponent's 0, by the way, which is just crazy. We'll talk about that as part of the game management. On the other side is the fact that the Rams did not have any timeouts with 10 minutes left in the game.
Right.
There's this weird thing where actually they lost their timeout last time out here because McVay challenged the fact whether or not it was a fumble. During this challenge discussion, Shanahan brings the offense onto the field. Looks like they might go for it. I was thinking to myself, there's been like an all-time shooting yourself in the face here from McVay if he would have lost the timeout, lost the challenge, and somehow convinced Shanahan to go for it in an obvious go for it situation. This was like a 5% win probability advantage. You should have been going for this one, even if it was, 6-7 yards to go. It still would have been positive to go for it here. And this was only 2 yards to go. But then they do the classic awfulness of just pretending like you're going to snap in, then take the delay game and go ahead and punt it. It's kind of inexcusable at this point. There's no explanation. After the game, Shanahan was asked about it. He said he didn't think about it. He took the question in the manner of like, did you ever think about going for it? He's like, no, we never thought about going for it. And what was your thought behind it? Our thought behind it was we didn't think it was the right move. That's it.
That's awful. Like, obviously the decision is really bad, but the fact that he has no framework for why he made that decision is like completely egregious, right? And everything you want to say about him being a great, schematic offensive mind and all these other things, like if he can't get those sorts of things right, that's a huge red flag in my opinion. But I think the real problem, honestly, was the 2nd and 1 decision making after Elijah Mitchell got the 1st and 10 run, 9 yards basically, 2nd and 1, running him up the middle and forcing it into a 3rd and 2 situation. You then do the whole Trent Williams, Kyle Juszczyk motion play, don't gain anything and then punt the football. 2nd and 1 needs to be the spot where you're pressing in that sort of situation. That's where you need to actually let Jimmy Garoppolo cook a little bit, right? That's where you, can get some play action, obviously free up the middle of the field. That's where George Kittle is going to be open 15, 20 yards downfield, and then you're in field goal range. Then you don't have to deal with that sort of situation. Running on 2nd and 1 right there, I think was probably not necessarily worse than punting on 4th and 2, but it definitely set it up to be a distinct possibility. Because I think if you get an incomplete pass on 2nd and 1, 3rd and 1, that's where you can sneak with Garoppolo. That's where the use check thing probably works a little bit better, and you still go for it on 4th down if you don't lose any yards in that situation. Because I do think even if they got 1 yard on the Kyle Juszczyk play, they probably still go for it on 4th down. Maybe I could be wrong on that, but I think that's the mentality and overall shift they really lost. They really lost in that particular sequence, in my opinion. So
yeah, I totally agree. I think that there's a big focus on your pass rate, and it's not just like what your pass rate is versus expectation or your total pass rate is in a vacuum. It's also like situationally, there's very different aspects of when you should be doing it or not. So if you look at the 49ers this year, and I'm just bringing up their pass frequency versus expectation, counting in the playoffs, everything including the playoffs here. So they are on 2nd and 1 or 2 to go. Their pass rate is 25%, whereas the league average is 36%. So that's one of their most run heavy formations or situations here. And then second between 3 and 7, they're also like 12% of our expectation. So again, it's like those are your shot plays. Those are your plays to make a big mark, because a normal team should be thinking to itself on 2nd and 1 or 2nd and 2 that we have this play to make a huge play, and then we have two more plays to get the
Right.
first down afterwards
Right.
if we don't get this play. Um, Starting up, we're actually in a worse position from an expected point standpoint once getting that first down than we are on
On
second and
second and
one.
one.
Second and
Right.
one.
Right.
Second one has a higher expected points you're expected to get from that situation than a new first down and 10. So press your advantage in those situations. It's always tremendously frustrating to me when I see teams do exactly that, which is in 2nd and 1 and 2, they're like, okay, let's just run the ball, pick up the first down, and then now we'll think about starting over again with trying to push the ball down the field.
Exactly. And I do think that's like the one spot that people just don't understand. And I do think it is a really big oversight right now, right? I think often, I don't know, this is probably like a weird tangent or weird thing to even go into, but like I've often thought, like, when would we have thought or know that analytics has maybe gone too far at the NFL level? Because I do think, in sports like baseball and sports like basketball, there are certain things where analytics have made the play a lot worse. And one thing that I've always thought of is when we actually see, guys and teams try and set up 2nd and 1, 2nd and 2 in those sort of short situations where instead of, going and diving for it on first down to extend the drive and get another 1st and 10 situation, they're diving just a little bit short so that they can set up a 2nd and 1 situation where they can then, try one of those deep passes without much risk, then get the, then get the first down conversion on the next down. So that's a very overlooked spot. And I'm glad you kind of, obviously highlighted that as well. Cause I do think that even I think specifically a guy like Kyle Shanahan should know that and understand that in kind of run heavy format, that's the spot where they absolutely need to be pressing, and they're just not doing it as definitely the thing where I thought they actually lost the game, unfortunately for them, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, and
So
even their third and short play calling was pretty uninspired. You mentioned the Trent Williams motion play. It's like it was great the first time you did it.
right.
No one was expecting it. You got in two busts on plays after that. Yeah, if you look in this game on this particular game on 2nd and 1 and 2 and 3rd and 1 and 2, they did not pass the ball once in any
Right.
of those situations that they had in this game. So not great, not great at all there. Now McVay does not get off without
No.
any punishment. I mentioned the challenges. So two failed challenges, the timeouts, no timeouts with 10 minutes remaining in this game. Didn't end up burning them, but very, very easily could have burned them significantly here. Multiple times. Well, they got a delay game at least once, and there were multiple times where there was that move when supposedly the umpire who's looking up at the play will look at the ball being snapped. No, we'll look at the clock, and then when it hits zero, then look down to see if the ball has
Ball
been snapped.
snap.
And if
Yeah.
so somehow they were making it, because there were multiple times where I thought it ticked down to zero where they didn't get
Yeah.
called there. And it just seems sloppy. It was sloppy in a way that's very weird, that the Shanahan and McVay, they have this sloppiness, this lack of thought and intention and practice and honing of things outside of what their core competencies are, which is the
Which is
scheming. And I think it falls in a little bit to this like head coach, schemer, things you can lose when you try to bring those two things together. You can lose, 5% win probability that you lose from not going for it on that 4th and 2. That's like losing a very good player for the game. That's
exactly
like not having
right.
Trent Williams. That's like
Right.
not having it's almost like not having Debo Samuel, honestly. Now he had a
Right.
huge play in this game, so he's probably worth a little bit more than that, but it's a big, big difference. So all they spend, all week long 100-hour weeks trying to grind out the smallest edges, and then you just piss away a 5%
Right,
edge.
right. It's egregious. I mean, it honestly is just that's probably the one of the most tilting things that we go back and forth on now, right? Is like they're just literally dumping win expectation on the ground for no reason when they're trying to completely grind out these much smaller edges all week in a number of different facets. So it is perplexing that they're missing on that in particular. And in this one, like they kind of got everything they needed to win this game, and it seems like they just didn't capitalize when they absolutely needed to. I mean, I think if you said, we see another kind of vintage Matthew Stafford type interception. We did get that early on in the red zone. He had that turnover to Jimmy Ward. And I think that was the play that the 49ers needed to win, right? They needed at some point for Stafford to make a poor throw and to have a pretty big swing in EPA per play based on that interception. And they got that early on. And I do think that not being able to capitalize is a big reflection on Shanahan and not being actually willing to maybe unleash Jimmy Garoppolo in the, most optimal of circumstances. So it's another one where it does seem like, the team that probably should have won ended up just losing it, and the other team emerged victorious because of it. I would say for sure, which is not a great mentality, but it does seem like that's my overall observation from both of these
Yeah,
games for
yeah. I
sure.
mean, you know,
So
you don't want to harp on these fourth down decisions, but I just wish you could get a little bit more. I mean, I realize even these models, they're pretty opaque. So
right,
it's then it becomes the like, well, the analytics said to do it, or the analytics didn't say to do it, and then so that's frustrating in another direction for people who want an explanation on whether it should have been done or not. But when you're talking to Shanahan about what was his decision here, then it would have been like, well, what about on 4th and 1? Would you have gone for it? Like
right.
what's the turning point? Was there any other factors that are going to it? Like, I want to hear a little bit more about what was being expected other than we have the lead, I guess. And so therefore that's what we're going to do in this circumstance. Definitely frustrating. These guys are great coaches overall, but
Right.
hopefully, they can lean on that sort of stuff a little bit more, get some help in that area, and we'll see what happens. Now, Super Bowl, I know we got a long ways. We got a lot of talk about Super Bowl. You got any early action? Are you already? I know you're out there moving lines. The sharp
Moving
money is
lines,
coming
moving.
in.
I did
The
I
sharp
did put a
money
little
is
bit.
coming in via Ben Brown. I think I
So
kind of like the Rams a little bit, but let me hear your
see,
take.
I like the Bengals a little bit at
Ooh.
+4. I do
Well, it was
think
three.
that.
Was it 3.5? I guess it was maybe for like a millisecond. It was 3.5, and then it went to 4. But
Yeah,
now,
I've basically seen
yeah.
it bet 4. I think it's probably going to bounce between 4 and 3.5 until kickoff for the most part. So we'll see some probably line movements in either direction when the big money bettors really start to come in here. But I think I would be surprised if there was a better number on the Bengals than +4 print at all into kickoff. So that's the number I'm on right now. I'm just waiting for these props to just get released into the market, and we're going to start pricing them out, and they're going to be on the PFF player props tool. Probably, I'm sure we're going to have some articles on them as well.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, this is it. This is like Christmas for sports bettors. So I'm just staring down, waiting and willing to open the presents once they become available. So
Yeah, let's do it. And again, everyone, promo code unexpected. Go and get 25% off at PFF. Thank you, Ben, so much for joining me. I'm not sure which team I'm going to do, but I'm going to do a post-mortem on another team later this week, either solo or bring in someone a little bit more familiar with that team. But until then, I'll be talking at you guys later this week. And then again, we'll talk with Ben early in the week to talk more about all the different action for the Super Bowl. Thanks so much, guys.